Today on the Dear BAMP podcast, we have Sarah King, who is the Director of Global Communications and Brand at Flywire, which, if you're not familiar, is a pretty quickly growing startup that's in the payments fintech arena. Pretty cool company to look at. Sarah's super passionate about creative and results-driven communications. She's excited to be on the show today. I also know she's a new mom, so we're very happy to have her here. Hey everyone, today on Dear BAMF, we have the incredible Sarah King, Director of Global Communications and Brand at Flywire, which is a Series E funded company in case you aren't familiar. Sarah is definitely a BAMF in the marketing realm. In case you're not familiar, she's been at several large tech companies, VP of marketing at Rebloom Flowers, if you're familiar with them. You've been in agency life, Sarah, over at March Communications before, so I know we're going to get into a bunch of agency-specific questions, and you have a lot of great experience, I think, to expand on today for us.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm psyched to be here and to be chatting with you.
We are psyched as well. So let's get into our questions that the Dear BAMPs have written in for. So first one here, what should you do when a client contact, a VP level in this case, is playing intermediary between your team and the CEO founder? Access to the CEO founder could greatly help your campaign and ongoing relationship, but the client contact seems adamant about keeping a divide and trust. And about keeping a divide, and our trust is dwindling. How would you answer this? Have you seen such a situation before? Kind of a blocker inside the comms team?
Oh, I've seen it. I've lived through it on both sides. As you said, my background started in agencies, and I moved over to the client side. And I have to admit, I may have been a blocker in my past. So,
oh, okay. Tell us about that experience. Now, why did you block? How about that? Why? What made you do that?
So I think, I think as communications professionals, we are proud of our craft. We want to take command of our craft. And we also want to, build a rapport internally, right? It's sort of this interesting shift that happens when you leave agency side and you get into client side. Your internal stakeholders become your clients. So you almost feel like you need to prove yourself to them in a way that you used to prove yourself to your clients. And I think in my instance, I was more junior. I was a bit territorial, not proud of it, right? These are things that we live through and we learn from.
Yeah.
I think a way to get around this for the person asking the question, oftentimes this comes up when there aren't ground rules laid out up front of the engagement. And I think that certain times and places necessitate the client contact stepping in, right? But it's really hard to predict. We can't see into each other's heads when that should be. And I think more often than not, there really doesn't need to be this type of friction. You hire an agency because you trust them. That trust should lend itself to giving them open access to the majority of the internal stakeholders, the executives, the CEO in this case. But I think what's important to do is have a very candid conversation with the client contact as soon as possible and nip it in the bud. And I think one thing that can help is, first of all, you can do this whenever. I would recommend doing it outside of sort of your normal weekly or biweekly catch up. So it just doesn't get conflated.
Standalone.
In the day-to-day, because you know how those can sometimes go, right? You run through the agenda and it just doesn't really seem to be, you want to make it a priority. It might not be a priority if you do it in the standard call. And so, a simple way to do it is I'm sure we're all in review period. We just closed out a quarter, bucket it as part of a Q1 review or, halfway through Q2 checkup and just say, I want to run through a list of things of what are working and what aren't working and see how we can address them. I think fundamentally trust needs to work both ways. And you need to reiterate that and just say, we were hired for a reason. You saw a lot of value in us when you brought us on board. These are the types of opportunities that you need to trust us to take on. And I think that the client contact should come to his or her senses. I think be prepared to maybe reach a happy medium at first. Say something like, we feel very strongly, we go directly to the CEO. Of course, we'll always keep you copied on the correspondence. So it's never as if you're trying to steal the relationship away from the CEO, but you're doing it in partnership with this client contact who obviously is critically important to the success of the program.
So you're saying definitely establish the ground rules early on. That could be your proactive approach. We do that quite a bit, just to make sure everyone knows the rules, because oftentimes then you find how you interpreted something, I interpreted something, and we're just not on the same page of how this relationship should go. That's one thing. And then secondly, here you're saying, hey, make it a standalone discussion. Don't just sweep it under the rug as the last agenda item in your weekly.
Absolutely. I feel very strongly about that, because that shows that that it's a serious roadblock to the success of your campaign. And sometimes it helps to tie it back to goals, right? If you have certain KPIs established with the client contact and you say, we know that these results are important to you, we feel that access being prevented may preclude us from reaching these goals. Can we come up with a solution to work around that? So, I think these are hard conversations, right? You want it to be a friction-free relationship. You want to be firing from all cylinders. But often these are the types of conversations that really help you crystallize how you want to structure your accounts, how you want to run your business, what the needs are, for accounts, and what you might want to look out for and replicate. Say you're an agency with multiple accounts and industries, what you want to replicate across your different lines of business.
Yeah. So when now, Sarah, that you're internal, again, you're at Flywire, do you even preemptively or proactively come to the table to, I'm assuming you guys work with, a handful of folks, and say, hey, just to put this on the table, this is what I expect, or this is what I would like out of this relationship, A, B, and C. That would be a phenomenal client, by the way. So I'm not thinking perhaps that is the case, but just being that you've been on the other side, is that something you've now implemented, I wonder?
Totally. And I think that, being on the agency side gives me more context, more empathy, more compassion for what my agencies are currently doing. It's not an easy job. Honestly, I truly believe agencies are only as successful as we allow them to be, as we as client people allow them to be. So my philosophy is very much like, there are no artificial boundaries here. I text them, we message all day. And yes, I've learned to be very upfront with that type of thing. So they know, for instance, like, this is a kind of a tactical example, but if great coverage comes out, like, I don't need to read the coverage note before it goes over to our CEO, right? Like, I want him to see it. I want the agency to take the credit for the great work, for securing the opportunity. And I want to help them build that relationship, because, again, that's going to enable them to be successful in the long term. And everything that they do is beneficial for me and my program and the broader, marketing team within Flywire.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. This is maybe a standalone question to this, but doesn't having the agency that you selected showcase directly to the CEO, let's say, the win that they just achieved, go back to making you look good?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, why would you prevent them, or the other way? Be like, look who I chose. See, that's working out.
Yeah. See, I nailed this. Yeah. That's exactly it. And I think that is like with all positions that require you to manage people, right? You should only be a supportive manager to them, not only to, support them in their professional development, but to know optically you look good if the people below you are doing a good job.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So yeah, that's a critical point. Absolutely.
I think that's just a good take-home message overall.
Yeah.
But okay, sounds good. I think we've attacked that one. We do I'll just say on our side, we do the same in setting up the relationship. We even call it designing the alliance with our clients. So that, again, there's no misunderstanding of how this should go and what to do when something bad happens, because there may be bumps in the road. So how do we handle those?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Next question. Here we go. Are you ready, Sarah?
I'm ready for Freddie.
It's becoming clear my CEO client wants to stretch the truth to make his company look better, fabricating data and signed customers. Oh, God, this is already okay. Showing potential for future growth is fine, but flat out lying isn't okay. He's asking me to communicate with media in ways I find unethical and that will jeopardize my relationship as well as my company's reputation. He's putting a lot of pressure on me. How should I approach this?
Ooh, wow.
Have you seen something like this before? Let's start with that.
Luckily, I have not been in this position, but I will say act quickly. I mean, this is the type of behavior that will bring businesses down. And I think the irony of this is that the media, who he's trying to manipulate, they're very smart, right? They're going to dig into it. They're going to realize there are no signed customers, and that the financial information that you're providing actually is unsubstantiated. So, I would say stick to your conviction. Pretty similar to my response to the first question, like get on the CEO's radar as soon as possible and take command of your craft. I think that, if I were in these shoes, I'd paint the worst picture scenario to him or her. Mm-hmm. And I would just say, listen, you're putting me in an impossible situation. I will not do this. I will not fabricate. I am willing to work with you to come up with a narrative that we feel is equally compelling, but is not lying. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you choose to go down this route, like, I'm just not going to be part of this plan. That's a really tough pill to swallow. Because you are potentially risking business for your agency. But I will say, in my agency life, the decisions we made to resign accounts that were just bringing us down from a culture perspective, like that were just too toxic to deal with day in, day out, mm-hmm. made us a much better, stronger, more engaged agency for the long run. So I would, it's a difficult decision to come to, but it's one that you should definitely treat seriously. I don't think that has to be your first knee-jerk reaction to resign the account. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting step one is, sit in a room or, in these days, a virtual Zoom room.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. With this CEO, paint the worst picture scenario, and always, and this is, like all things, present a workaround, present a problem solve.
Yeah, solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say usually stable people will come to their senses and understand what they're doing is just wrong. And hopefully, you can sort of get around this obstacle. This is really tricky though. I mean, it's a really tricky question, and I'm sorry to the person who's going through this.
Yeah. I can say we've had this before, not in necessarily the lying side overtly, but just where you go, you know what, we're not on the same page here of values. We're always about our values. And I don't know if for this person that they're at a place where the values are very clearly defined for the agency and what they stand for. But in our case, for a client that isn't upholding our values, which we've also articulated, communicated, et cetera, hey, if it's just not a fit and it's not working, then hey, we don't need to be in this partnership together. And we've done that before. We actually recently, this was a couple months ago, but we had a founder really, really blow up on Sunday morning, like at 7 a.m. to one of the people on the team, because there was one word of an article that came out that, yes, was notable, the word in particular, but was changed in 14 minutes by the writer. It was digital, blew over, etc. But the response, the reaction, the verbal assault, if you will, on this was ridiculous. It just didn't match up. And so in the conversation that we had following up with the founder, it was just like, hey, that was uncalled for. We don't need to, that, yes, that was a mistake on our end. Yes, it was also changed immediately. We got that taken care of, but your reaction is not how we expect a partner to be. So if you're not on the same page with our values here, that's totally fine. We don't all have to believe in the same stuff. But then if we're not, we got to go. So talk to you soon. And that really 180 the relationship, I will say, because he did apologize. He did say, that was overblown and so on and so forth. But you got to call it out.
You do. Yeah. That's such a good point. You oftentimes, when you go back and hold people accountable for their actions, you gain respect, right? You gain respect. You improve the relationship. They see you, in this instance, the CEO sort of sounds like a bully, right? And how do we deal with bullies?
Yeah.
We approach them front on. We go on the offense. And you got to take that approach. You got to stick to your gut. You have to articulate the right and wrong and really don't back down. And I'm so happy to hear that in that instance your agency came out stronger, or your relationship came out stronger. Because, that's best case scenario there.
Yeah, that one did work. But the point of it was we were prepared to just go, okay, not working. And you got to be able to walk away from that. I think that's the struggle for agencies, is to go like, ooh, oh my gosh, are we willing to let go? It always boils down. Are you willing to let go of that fat account that's on your P&L?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's where the rubber hits the road on the value side. I'll tell you that. Okay, let's have the next question here. This one's a little bit shorter. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, and it's in relation to our current pandemic, of course. Asking from an employee communication perspective during COVID, how should I communicate with my staff about mental health when I myself am having trouble with this? Now, so to me, this is still an internal comms quandary, which maybe you could relate to being internal, at Flywire. So what would you say? Like, you're trying to communicate about something, but you yourself are dealing with it and not well.
Yeah, this is a really good question. And I've been thinking a lot about this. I think that what we're going through it's hard to reconcile with the enormity of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so unprecedented. I would say in this case, it's okay to show vulnerability. I've been listening to the news and reading a lot of articles, about how leaders are working through crisis and managing through crisis. And sort of to summarize one of the key takeaways that I've really responded to, it's really, courage isn't having no fear. It's taking action in the face of fear, right? You can't let fear paralyze you or, stagnate your ideas. And so I think first and foremost, like, when you communicate to your employee base, be human, right? Be open.
Yeah.
This is something you're struggling with too. It would be rare if we weren't struggling with it, frankly.
Yeah.
And I think that people really respond to that because we're all sort of grieving in our own way. Grief manifests itself in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And just to share in that empathy and compassion is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that too. What have you guys been doing over there?
Yeah, so one thing that we've done, which, I can't take credit for, but is just such a great program that was rolled out by our people and culture team, who, by the way, have done a lot of these communications, but don't claim to be the expert in this. And I think that's another key point too. Like, you don't have to pretend like you know everything and you know how to deal with everything. It's more, take the tact that, like, you're just sharing best practices that work for you, that tend to work for other people. But anyway, one thing that we do is we've started giving out to our employees, we're calling it a work from home stipend. And so
there you go.
It's added to our paycheck, and it goes towards mental health program. So whether that be like a mindfulness app or a meditation app or something, the company is rallying around the employees to invest in these types of things so that they, on their own time, can, take some time away from the computer, take some time away from responsibilities, and just invest in the self. And so that has gone over really well at my company. I think it's, I would love to share it with other people in the hopes that they maybe implement something similar to that, because again, it's just, we are all, even the most successful leaders in the world don't have a playbook for this.
Oh yeah. I was going to say there is not one.
There is none. You kind of just want to give into that and collectively take the next step forward.
One thing I'd say too, just on that line of being open and empathetic, and I haven't observed this yet, but just always to check is like, okay, what's too much? You don't want to like overshare. This kind of gets into the realm of HR, but you don't want to, overshare in that sense. It's this thin kind of murky line of giving you context and saying I'm a human too, and here's what I'm dealing with the line of like, oh, is something too much. I don't think that necessarily would be the case here. However, always something to think about is to bring in HR on these, just to make sure that nothing is being overstepped and making then someone feeling, God forbid, uncomfortable. Like, oh my God, my boss just said she's crying every night in her shower or something. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. We've actually been thinking about that notion of oversharing a lot, just in the context of how often should we be communicating, because even outside of the topic of mental health, but just generally about this pandemic, like, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing that we communicate a couple times a week to our global employee base about what we're doing? Do people just need a break from all of it?
There's something to be said about that, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that, again, like, there's not quite a right answer yet, but we're all working through this together. We're kind of learning from mistakes where we're asking for feedback from our employees about how the check-ins are going. And that just incrementally is helping us kind of formalize our internal comms. Yeah.
All right. Last question, Sarah, for us here. A client of mine had to conduct a pretty significant round of layoffs, yet is gearing up to announce a funding round in the next few weeks. The company downsizing was handled appropriately, and we didn't receive too much heat from past and remaining employees. How do we remain sensitive yet to show our key audiences that the company is stable and growing? So this is this classic case of, we let go of people and had to downsize, but just wait, things have turned around, and what do we do? Especially now in COVID, this is, I think, hugely important. So what would you say about that? How do you keep sensitive with those events happening so back to back?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I'm sure we'll see more of the layoffs. Maybe not as much of the funding immediately, but certainly more of the layoffs. So I think this is one of those cases where a couple things. You got to over prepare for all types of backlash and inquiries. And you have to nail the messaging and make sure the messaging is consistent across every platform that you send it out to. Because, there could be an instance where someone who's unauthorized to speak to media, someone in the C-suite who, isn't a spokesperson, kind of goes rogue to a key investor or something, and, it all kind of comes back to haunt you. So I would say for big kind of corporate inflection points like this, just have, obviously have a master FAQ document. Make sure that all ancillary materials derive from there. And I would say, without knowing the details of this particular company, given the circumstances, don't hide the truth, right?
Yeah.
But don't overcompensate and say that you're in very strong financial health and that you haven't been impacted at all, because the reality is we've all been impacted, and we'll all continue to be impacted. We'll see strong fluctuation from the pandemic. So I would say, crisp messaging. I would say
everyone on the same page of the messaging.
Everyone on the same page. Definitely prepare for potentially disgruntled employees. Going online, going to Glassdoor or going to another public social media site and airing grievances, because we all know that it's a really difficult time, and we tend to hear most from the unhappy people than we do the happy ones. And have responses prepared for all those scenarios. I would definitely equip, your spokespeople, whether it's your CEO or your head of HR, whoever's, speaking to the deal, just to be ready to talk about the layoffs, even if it was handled well initially. That press will dig and they'll find out. And they may even do their own research and talking to people. So you just want to cover all your bases.
You don't need to say, okay, let's blow this out of the water, get 10 articles to cover us and feature us about this. You can, because this person is asking about how do we say sensitive yet show our key audiences that the company is stable and growing. This can be just a communication that is not media focused at all. For instance, it could be via an email, not to say that doesn't get leaked, but it doesn't need to be let's have a party and showcase this and celebrate it all over the media. Especially in the case of where that media, the journalists could look back and go, wait a second, 3 months ago, you guys or 2 months ago, whenever, you just laid off a bunch of people. So what the heck is actually going on here? In other words, consider not a media event out of this. Consider an internal communication.
Really great point.
And just an external one that's just via email or a call. And that's it.
Absolutely. Specific client communications, business partner comms, but no social, no media. I think that's a really good point, to the extent that, you feel like you can control the narrative without having to make it a full-blown campaign. Then I think that's a really a serious consideration that this company should make. I think the only thing to look out for in that instance is that do you appear sort of flat-footed if it does get out? And that's where the over-preparation comes in, right? Like you have
exactly
prepared, you have your designated spokesperson or two who can get on the phone and address it, and you move on from there. It's a very unusual news cycle right now. Even if you want it to be a big media campaign, it may not be a big media campaign. You just never know in any given day in this climate what the press will be looking to cover.
Sarah, way to hammer through those questions. Some tough ones today, for sure.
Done? Oh, wow.
That was our lineup. Yes.
That was fun. These were very good questions.
These were. Well, they're real questions too. So this is the reason why. I
love these because they speak to, they show what true PR comms people do. I feel like,
so true.
My friends who don't really know what I do are like, oh, do you go and plan those events? And do you do? And I'm like, well, not necessarily. There's a lot more that goes into it than.
Well, this is exactly why we do this podcast, because there hadn't yet been something that showcases the hairy, the nitty gritty, the complex issues that comms people and marketing folks go through in real. And it's not just attending fancy parties and checking you in at some glamorous event. Right. That is hardly any of our jobs, in fact.
No.
So
not even sure I've ever done that once in my career.
No, and me neither. So wasn't part of my thing either. Yep. So it's just vastly complex. We're all in this, not to take the COVID thing, but like we're all in this together as comms people, marketing people, we're all kind of in the same trenches here. So we know the understanding of that. And that's what this podcast is for folks who get it and are in the trenches and just want to get some advice. So you nailed it today, Sarah. Thank you.
I am so grateful for the opportunity to chat with you. It's always a pleasure. And I look forward to potentially coming back on
and post your baby.
Oh yes, I'll see you on the other side.
Exactly, perfect. Can't wait to meet him or her. That'll be great.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
Thanks for listening to Dear Banff, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show is created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. Our music was composed by Tiffany Dizon, played by San Diego Symphony's Art of the Lawn, and produced by Daniel Kosner. Our podcast was produced by Citizen Recording. If you have a hairy PR or marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us by going to www.bamcommunications.biz/Dear Banff. Don't forget the F. We'll be back next Monday with another episode of Dear Banff. Until then,